A very good morning to you all, and thank you very much for coming to this press release. I understand there are so many activities that are going on at the moment in the country, but the fact that you value and respected our invitation to support us in this campaign against the death penalty in Zimbabwe, we really appreciate that. My name is Blessing Gorejena. I'm the Programs Coordinator with the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum. And with me here, I have Bongai Chikwanda, who is the Campaigns Coordinator with Amnesty International, and Ms. Sarah Moyo, who is the Chairperson of Zwala, and Kelvin Azangwi, who is the Director of Pandare. Yes. And the main purpose of this briefing today is to focus on the campaigns that are going on currently as we commemorate the World Day Against Death Penalty in the world, and also in Zimbabwe. The commemorations were held on the 10th of October. That was on Friday, which is the day that has been set aside internationally to commemorate and amplify the campaigns and calls for the abolition of death penalty in the world over. And indeed, Zimbabwe is not an exception. I'm sure for some of you who have been following up on the developments, in particular when we adopted the new constitution last year on the 22nd of May, which came into operation in full force on the 22nd of August 2013. The new constitution now has a provision that partially abolishes death penalty, in that it still acknowledges or retains the death penalty against men aged between 21 and 70 years, and has abolished the death penalty against women, including even a stop to executions against women who are currently on death row, and men aged above 70 and below 21. So this is the main reason or objective we are gathered here today, colleagues, to amplify these campaigns and also seek the media voice as well to join us in this campaign against the death penalty, total abolition of death penalty in Zimbabwe. So I will ask Bongai Chikwanda, who heads the campaigns programs within Amnesty International, to share with us briefly the statements from Amnesty International in terms of their campaigns that they are currently running against the death penalty in Zimbabwe. Over to you, Bongai.
Good morning, a very good morning to you all. Since 2003, every year on the 10th of October, the World Coalition Against the Death Penalty calls upon abolitionist NGOs, networks, activists, and institutions to raise awareness on the use of the death penalty around the world. This year, the World's Day focused on the use of the death penalty against people with mental and intellectual disabilities. However, as you know, Amnesty International opposes the death penalty in all cases without exception as a violation of one of the most fundamental of human rights, which is the right to life. It is an ultimate cruel, inhuman, degrading punishment. Retention of the death penalty for men is incompatible with the state's obligations under Article 2, 3, and 26 of the United Nations International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, to which Zimbabwe is a state party. The Zimbabwean government should ensure equality by abolishing the death penalty for all persons. Looking at Africa, the vast majority of countries in Africa have moved away from the death penalty, while a small isolated group of countries still cling to state-sanctioned killing. The last known execution in Zimbabwe took place in 2005. Amnesty reiterates its call for total abolition of the death penalty. Most member states of the SADC have abolished the death penalty in law and in practice. And this includes countries like Angola, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, with a similar liberation history to Zimbabwe. The execution of a few people will not provide solutions to this unacceptable high rate of crime. While we urge the Zimbabwean government to take all steps in its power to establish an official moratorium on executions, there is no excuse for retaining the death penalty. It is one of the most hated pieces of legislation even during the liberation struggle, and it was applied by the minority white government. A further call is still being made by Amnesty International for Zimbabwean lawmakers to repeal this unjust piece of legislation that takes away people's fundamental human right and freedom to life. Thank you.
Thank you, Hongai. I will ask Sarah to brief us on the gender perspective and the campaigns that they are running as well against the death penalty in Zimbabwe.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sarah Moyo. I'm the board chair of ZWALA, which is an acronym for Zimbabwe Women Lawyers Association. This is a non-governmental organization that is committed to the promotion of justice and equality for all men and women. And as a women human rights organization, ZWALA has become involved in the issue of the death penalty because, as you are aware, we had 2 women on death row who approached ZWALA for legal assistance in terms of the new dispensation under the Constitution, which states that not only can the death sentence now no longer be imposed on women, but it also cannot be carried out against women. So ZWALA, as a women rights organization, believes that there should be equality for both men and women in the application of the death sentence. We believe that the death sentence should be abolished for men between the ages of 21 and 70. As a women human rights organization, we believe that there is no rational justification for the harsher treatment that the Constitution makes for men who are convicted of murder between the ages of 21 and 70. Section 56 of the new Constitution states that it is unfair treatment to subject persons to unequal protection of the law if there is no justification for that selective treatment. And in our view, looking at the situation, we believe that the authorities have not given us any facts or reasoning or argument that would justify having unequal treatment between men and women. So because the Constitution says that all men and women are justified to equal protection and equal benefit under the law, we believe that the discriminatory provision that allows the death penalty to be imposed on men between the ages of 21 and 70 should be abolished. And whilst we have read in the media that the Minister of Justice and Legal Affairs has recently made a pronouncement that Cabinet will be reviewing the cases of the 97 inmates who are on death row, which includes one woman, Charlotte Sibanda. Whilst we believe that this is a welcome development, we believe that this is not the complete response or a complete solution. We believe that the death penalty should be abolished in total. As you are aware, the death sentence has not been carried out for a number of years. So that in itself shows that the authorities are also ambivalent about the wisdom of having the death penalty on our statute books. And so we believe that non-governmental organizations and all concerned citizens need to join the campaign which is being led by Amnesty International for total abolition of the death sentence. This year, I believe that the theme of the commemoration of the World Day Against the Death Penalty is mental illness. And from legal cases that have been presented in our local courts and from research that has been conducted in other jurisdictions, it is well known that people who are sentenced to death suffer a great mental anguish, not only because they have been sentenced to death, but because of the conditions under which they are held. Very often they are held in near total solitude with from 22 to 24 hours. There is no interaction or very little interaction with other prisoners. For example, now with the woman who is currently on death row, we know that she's being held at Chikurubi Maximum Prison on death row, which is a section of the prison that was built to cater for male inmates. So now you have one woman on death row with 96 other men on death row. So the mental anguish that they suffer from not having companionship, from having enforced idleness, means that these men and women are at grave risk of mental illness and mental harm. So, and in fact, previous reports that have been reported in the newspapers have mentioned also that a lot of the death row inmates actually end up suffering mental disease and mental anguish. And whilst the prison regulations state that the prison authorities are required to remove prison inmates who show symptoms of mental illness, that does not appear to be the case. And so as Zimbabwe Women Lawyers Association, we are joining the call by Amnesty International to say that the death sentence needs to be abolished. It is cruel and inhuman treatment. The conditions under which and the fears that prisoners suffer whilst awaiting the death sentence are not justifiable in a democratic state. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. If I may hand over to Kelvin to lead us into the brief statement around the campaign that Pandare is having, in particular the discrimination that has been necessitated by the current provision in the Constitution regarding the death penalty against men. Over to you, Kelvin.
Thank you very much. Good morning, colleagues. Pandare Men's Forum on Gender has been working in Zimbabwe, I think, since 1995 to promote a society that is free from all forms of discrimination against women and girls, but also to promote gender equality. And we are here today joining hands with Uzwala, Amnesty International, and other progressive organizations on this day, and clearly saying that we are fully behind Uzwala's case that is currently before the Constitutional Court, calling for the removal of women who are on death row, as we have been always saying, and also this is contrary to our new Constitution. But I think in this regard, Amnesty International clearly spells out that the death penalty is the ultimate denial of human rights, and it also the premeditated, cold-blooded killing of human being by the state. And this is cruel, inhuman, and degrading punishment that is done in the name of justice. And we are clearly saying, we are acknowledging the exclusion of women from death penalty as a very progressive clause in our Constitution, but we strongly feel that there is an unfair treatment on men aged between the ages of 21 and 70, as the law should be applied equally, irrespective of gender. I think over the years, as a country, we've been progressively promoting messages that have been promoting gender equality, and this differential application of the law or punishments on the basis of gender equality greatly contradicts those messages, and it will take us many years back. And it is our position that the sentence is also very inhuman, and the practice is inconsistent with the human rights treaties, both globally and also locally, especially globally on the optional protocol on the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights that calls for the universal abolition of the death penalty. So on this day, we are also then saying we're in support of all the efforts that are calling for the total removal of the death penalty. And we are saying no human being, regardless of gender, has the right to suffer and to be treated to the death penalty. I think we are also very clear that over the years, I think the last execution has been in 2005, and I think I cannot reiterate the total number of men who have been tortured or who have suffered mental illnesses because of being isolated and being under the death penalty. And we are making a very clear call for the total abolishment of the death penalty, and our efforts are also to ensure that that constitutional clause is removed in Zimbabwe so that the men aged between 21 and 70 are also not subjected to the death penalty. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Tony. Maybe just to add that one other factor which actually buttress all this calls for the total abolition of death penalty is the fact that the death sentence is a maximum sentence, and once carried out in the form of execution, it cannot be reversed, even if the victim or the person who would have been executed is to be found innocent later. So I'm sure you can appreciate where our concerns are coming from and all the issues that our colleagues around the table have actually raised. So now I can open up the floor for questions and answers. I would prioritize colleagues from the media, since this is a media briefing, and then maybe later on in the subsequent rounds for questions, I will then entertain questions from colleagues from civil society. Thank you very much. So those with questions, you can post them to the panelists. Okay, yes, my brother, if you can identify yourself.
My name is Brian.
Okay.
I'm a media practitioner. The question goes like this. How long is the case is one appeal before the Constitutional Court?
Can I get maybe two more before I ask my panelists to respond in the interest of time? Do we have any more questions? Okay. Yes, my brother.
Organizations that are working for the death penalty, where were you when it was put in the Constitution in the first place?
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any more questions? All right. I will ask my panelists to respond. I think the first one, it goes to you, Sarah, and then the second one is more general, so anyone can take it. So I'll start with you, Sarah.
Yes. The constitutional case that has been filed by Zwala, together with originally the two women who are on death row, and one of whom subsequently died of natural causes, was filed earlier this year. And the matter has been set down for hearing this month.
And where were you when the provisions were put in the Constitution as the campaigners for the abolition? Wonga, if you want to take that up.
Maybe just to say that Amnesty International did not start working on the death penalty 2 or 3 years ago, but it has been working, it's a traditional campaign of Amnesty International since 1962. So we have been campaigning for the total abolition of the death penalty worldwide. And the opportunity, a golden opportunity, did arise when Zimbabwe was writing the new constitution. And Amnesty International managed to lobby the political parties that were in the government of national unity for total abolition. We also submitted papers to COPAC with the request for the total abolition of the death penalty. Besides that, Amnesty International has also been carrying out public education, human rights education in communities, with community referendums, many community referendums being done. So Amnesty International did not start yesterday, but it started in 1962, and we have been able to lobby for abolition. But not yet. This is we have achieved partial abolition. It's not yet total abolition, and we would like the total abolition of the death penalty.
Okay. I don't know, Kelvin, if you wanted to add.
I would really say we had been working with Amnesty International, but our main area of concern was really ending all forms of discrimination. After the Constitution came out, we didn't see this one coming, wherein men aged between the ages of 21 and 70 were then subjected to the death penalty. So this is wherein we then scaled up our efforts and our partnerships with Amnesty International, and we are here also now saying this is also wrong for men, and it's a clause that we want to see removed even in the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
I can also just add that Zwala, which is part of the Women's Coalition, also during the course of the drafting of the new constitution, lobbied for the total abolition of the death penalty. So again, when the draft constitution was put out to a referendum with the partial abolition for women, the Women's Coalition was pleasantly surprised, because it's not what we had been asking for as the women's movement, because we wanted equal treatment between men and women. We do not want a perception that women are weaker than men or need special favor in this area.
Thank you very much. Is it a follow-up so that I give others a chance? Okay.
I would still ask that the draft came up, and then the draft went through both houses of parliament, and we didn't see when that was being debated in both houses of parliament. Was it not then the most opportune moment for you to come in?
I hope my colleague is not mistaking us with members of parliament and appreciates the scope of influence that civil society has in our country. But nonetheless, I'm sure colleagues can take that up as well. I saw a hand somewhere there. Yes. Okay.
I wanted to ask. She said you regularly hold mini referendums in terms of your campaigns, and I would be tempted to think that people are of the general consensus that they don't want the death penalty. So at the end of the day, are we saying your campaign is ineffective, or are we saying our government didn't listen to what the people really want?
Sure, colleagues have taken note of that. Can I have one more? There is a hand behind. Okay, I will have it. Sorry.
I wanted to ask about the current settings in trade. Are they in tandem with what is envisaged in the Constitution? I mean, from your observation. And I also thought that you were also going to speak about alignment of laws with the new Constitution. Has anything been done to ensure that those laws are aligned so that whatever is envisaged in the new Constitution is implemented?
Thank you very much. I think any takers, they were not specifically referring to any of the statements, so I think you wanted to start.
I'll try by answering his question where he was asking where we were, a continuation. Maybe what I can say is Amnesty International managed to hold a conference where we invited the legal secretaries of all political parties to come in and give their party positions on the death penalty. On that conference, two legal secretaries managed to attend, and in the government of national unity, which was in the government of national unity then, and that was David Coulthard and Innocent Konesi. But we all know that the legal secretary, the opinion of the legal secretary of ZANU-PF, Honorable Emerson Mnangagwa, it's public, that he has been for total abolition of the death penalty. And he also confirmed that So all the 3 legal secretaries confirmed that they have been for total abolition. Further to that, we then managed to lobby parliamentarians, and an outcome of that was obviously the motion that was moved later, even though the constitution had been passed, a motion that was moved by parliamentarians for abolition of the death penalty. But maybe just to also go on to the question of the human rights education that we are conducting in provinces. Human rights education is being conducted by theatre groups. So as part of their work to find out whether public opinion has, what the public is saying, that is how they gauge. It's a form of a barometer of finding out where public opinion is. But just to note that our history has been littered, or countries' histories has been littered by mass violations of human rights because of public opinion. And when it comes to the issue of the death penalty, public opinion is not the way to go. It's more of political leadership. That's what we believe.
Okay, thank you.
But I think maybe I can add to what Mungai has said, in that public opinion is actually divided on the issue of the death sentence. So this is why you saw that when the new constitution was put to the referendum, obviously people will have had different viewpoints on different clauses, but yes, our society is divided as to whether the death penalty should be kept on our statute books. And this is why, as Amnesty International is correctly saying, it will really now take our parliament to assume a position of leadership and do what is right, because this is one of those subjects where people have very strongly held views. So you will never have a unanimous decision in the whole of our society.
Okay, maybe on the sentencing trend, I think from my recollection, I've only heard of one case that went through the High Court and had the accused person sentenced to death ever since the coming into effect of the new constitution. So I think it's actually an indication that even the judiciary is actually shunning away from imposing the capital punishment. I'm not sure on the current cases that are currently being held. And in response to Lani Miga's question around the campaigns, whether they are defective or not, or it's the government that is not, the authorities that are not being sensitive to the cause that campaigners like Amnesty International are putting forward. I think what actually is of great surprise to us is the fact that we did not receive any reasoning behind the retention of the death penalty between men aged between 21 and 70 years. It's not clear why. I mean, for some reasons, the authorities think that, I think it actually includes most of the men around here, deserve such kind of, inhumane and degrading treatment. I think to us, death is a form of torture. So why excluding everyone else and retain a man between 21 and 70? If we can get a clarification and an explanation around that, I'm sure it will also help us perhaps address some of the concerns that you are raising. And to us, I think it's an indication to say that I think there is an acceptance of this progressive movement world over, that the death penalty is not really justified in a democratic society. The fact that they acknowledge it partially, it gives us that motivation that I think in some way or the other, they actually acknowledge that this is not the best practice ever. I think we can still take more questions. If you want to
there was a question also about the alignment of the laws. Yes. Again, I think as we all know from media reports, there has again been lots of calls for the alignment process to be dealt with in haste. But of course, the government has said that its resources have certain challenges, and that they are working on the alignment of the various laws. So as far as the death penalty is concerned, yes, as Blessing has said, if a woman were to be accused of murder or tried for murder or any of the other statutes or of offences under any of the other statutes that provide for the death sentence, the courts at present would not impose the death sentence, even though the laws themselves have not actually been aligned. But yes, it is a concern to non-governmental organizations and other stakeholders that the alignment of the laws with the new constitution is taking such a long time.
Thank you very much. We can take the second round, third round now. Okay, yes.
I'm working on I'm a freelance journalist. My question can go to any of the organizations. I wanted to know, is there any alternative to the death sentence, especially in terms of number of years? And secondly, if there is any, isn't that going to be justice, something like a poetic justice, whereby somebody can be given, for example, 100 years of a sentence, even if somebody is 25 years old, given that these days in some parts of the countries the lifespan of people are no longer, maybe people are no longer living yet, like they used to do. Like some other countries live up to 50 years old. So if there is any alternative, isn't that going to be something that is going to just look as if the death sentence is no longer there, but in practical terms it actually will be there?
All right. Yes.
I also was maybe with the same opinion, plus saying, is there what are the pros and cons of removing the death penalty or leaving it there? Are we not promoting the people to commit murder just because they know there is no longer a capital punishment?
Okay.
I would agree. And then throughout the presentations, the three presenters, I should say the four presenters, expressed surprise on the outcome of the draft when it had that clause which was talking about partial death penalty. But what did you do as civil society to lobby the authorities before the final document came out, the final constitution?
Okay. And then
my question goes to the gentleman from Pandare. Recently, there was calls of politicians within the ruling party, the listening to people, including the president, calling for execution of people coming through. She actually said their heads should be cut. What's your comment on that?
all right. Okay. I will have Kelvin respond first, and then.
Thank you very much. I think that's a different question, but but it's also linked to committing murder. Yes, we want to acknowledge the increasing cases of rape cases in the country, and while it's the increasing cases, I think the calling for beheading, I think this is also one of the things that we are here saying. We don't want anyone to be murdered in cold blood, but we want to acknowledge that we need to increase all our efforts to reduce rape in Zimbabwe, and in the majority of cases, again, you'd realize that in most instances, you'd realize that it's men who are committing these murders. It will go back again, and I want to link it to the second question that was asked. We never get really to get the reasons around what is it that, what was the reasoning behind the 21 to 70, but again, from the public sentiments and even the political sentiments, it is around maybe some of the forms, the crimes that are committed, where, as you're rightly indicating, in the number of instances, we have very high cases of rape cases in the country, and it's not just between the ages of 21 to 70, but of course it goes beyond that. And our position is that one, rape we need to scale up all our efforts to ensure that every woman and every man is safe from any form of abuse. Secondly, we are also saying no one should be subjected to any form of cold-blooded inhuman treatment in the form of capital punishment. And so yes, I think these calls are a result of the outrage, but we are hoping that this will not translate in the actual carrying out and execution of those on death row. And alternatives, I think I'll leave my colleagues to speak to alternatives, but one form of alternative is really life imprisonment, which can be an alternative other than just ensuring that we have the death penalty.
Yes, I think as Zwala, because we are calling for the total abolition of the death penalty, what this means is that no matter how offensive a crime may be, we are saying that the death sentence is never justified under any circumstances, whether a person is convicted of the crime of treason or rape or gang rape or any or murder. We are saying that we want a total abolition of the death penalty. Because also studies have come to the conclusion that the death penalty is never really a deterrent. Most cases of murder are done when the murderer is under great emotional stress. So whilst a person looking at the matter objectively may say, well, you know, no situation or crime ever justifies taking the risk of the death sentence. Very often when these crimes are committed, the person is not in a right frame of mind. And therefore, as Pandare says, we believe that if the death sentence is abolished, it must be abolished for all crimes, including rape. And then with regard to the question that was made as to if we abolish the death penalty, is that not, can't remember what the exact words are.
Are we not promoting people to commit?
Oh yes, that's where we say that it's not really a deterrence. But yes, there is a provision for imposition of life sentences under our statutes. And whilst it could be said that being permanently incarcerated in prison is another form of death, but again we believe that if the conditions under which people are detained are humane, then they would have another opportunity to rehabilitate themselves under those circumstances.
Thanks, sir. And Wongai, maybe to reiterate on the last question, I think that has not been addressed around the campaigns. What were we doing between the period when the draft constitution was being debated, and what perhaps what kind of initiatives were you carrying out to ensure that we also contribute to the outcome of the constitution? I hope I got right. That was the last point.
I think
it's the same issues that we were talking about, that we have been lobbying what we would call influential or strategic people in government. And obviously that would be the relevant ministry, the Ministry of Justice. We have also been lobbying political parties to come up with a position in their constitutions, or whether it is in their manifestos around the total abolition of the death penalty, their position on the death penalty. But just to say that the process did not end after the final constitution came out. The process is still continuing up to now. And we've been holding lobbying meetings now and again. As well, the commemoration of World Day Against the Death Penalty is also a strategy. It's also a strategy to lobby for total abolition. So the work still is being done.
All right, thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our press briefing. And for those of you who would want maybe follow-up interviews, I'm sure colleagues around here are available. You can have a quick chat with them. Perhaps there are some questions that were not addressed because of the limited time that we had. Thank you very much for coming. And before you go, please, there are drinks and snacks to be served soon after this briefing. And let's continue chatting. Thank you once again.